Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Tuesday, the 24th day of June, 2025. Now, officially, Iran and Israel have accepted a ceasefire. However, all is not well with Israel, as our headlines will now explain. Let's look at them. First of all, Donald Trump says Israel and Iran don't know what the blank they're doing after the ceasefire is broken, supposedly by both sides. This is from the Jerusalem Post. And then in a story from Virtual Jerusalem, the Israel Defense Minister KATZ said Iran will pay for shattering the ceasefire. Rather scathing story here. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then finally, from the Times of Israel, from the Iranian's atomic chief, he vows that Tehran will restore its nuclear program. Okay, so let's see what these stories mean right now and how they fit with last day's Bible prophecy, as we always do here on Breaking News, because our goal is to explain to you how the stories of the day fit with the program of God, what He has for time and eternity as revealed in the Scripture. The second coming of Jesus Christ is the culmination, but there's many events that will precede it that have been laid out for us in Scripture, and every day we look and see how these stories fit. So let's take some time and do this. All right, headline number one. Trump says Israel, Iran don't know what the blank they're doing after the ceasefire has been broken. He said both countries had violated the ceasefire agreement and that additional Israeli strikes in Iran would be a, quote, serious violation of the ceasefire he had brokered. He claimed that both Israel and Iran had violated this newly broken ceasefire on Tuesday. In a statement to the press on the White House lawn, he said the two countries had lost sight of themselves. We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard they don't know what the blank they're doing, he said. He added that he was deeply upset with both countries. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, you now have 12 hours, you don't go out the first hour, just drop everything you have on them. I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. The U.S. president then said he was upset at Israel for unloading bombs on Tehran before the ceasefire took effect. I got to get Israel to calm down now, Trump said as he left the White House. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before, the biggest load that we've seen. Now Trump says he's going to head to Israel. Later, he took to Truth Social to warn Israel about striking Tehran again. Defense Minister Israel Katz had ordered strikes in Tehran after Iran launched two missiles at northern Israel hours after the ceasefire had taken effect. So Tehran had broken the ceasefire. Trump told reporters he was going to come to Israel to see if he could stop the conflict from resuming. Israel has to calm down. I have to get Israel to calm down, he said. I'm going to see if I can stop it. Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu were holding a phone call shortly after Trump made his comments. In their call, Trump demanded that Netanyahu completely cancel the attack. Netanyahu responded that a strike is necessary, as per a senior Israeli official. Israel will reportedly now only hit one target in its latest wave of attacks on Tehran. Trump still pushed for Israel to completely stop the attack in a post that he made on Truth Social. Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt, and the ceasefire is in effect, Trump wrote. Now, comments on the story from the Jerusalem Post were almost all unfavorable to Trump, and one of them kind of put what the consensus was. By letting the Islamic regime survive, the U.S. military industrial lobby succeeded in ensuring that Israel will never have peace. All right, only time will tell. But it seemed that in the midst of the fighting, there was a growing groundswell for a regime change in Iran. We've been talking about that the last few days. The son of the late Shah of Iran has a huge following. The eldest son has a huge following, and it appeared that the possibility that the present regime would be replaced was in the foreground. However, with the ceasefire, this possibility now seems to be over. Russia is coming to the aid of Iran, as will China, because both countries need this present regime to remain in power. And as we mentioned yesterday, this is very important. This fits the biblical scenario, namely that Iran, battered but not broken, comes to Moscow for help. The regime, though weakened, is not defeated, and its goals and aspirations about both Israel and the United States have not changed. They still want to destroy both the little Satan and the big Satan. So, all in all, it seems that this ceasefire has actually given new life to Iran. However, as always, it remains to be seen what will take place in the short term. So it seems that the initial result, to sum up, of the ceasefire is the halting of any groundswell for a regime change in Iran. So it looks like we're going back to the same old with little actually accomplished. Only time will tell. Now, we explain all this in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, specifically signs 9 through 11. This is found on our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy, where we explain who the players are, what will happen, where everyone will eventually line up. And we see with what's taken place yesterday, it's right on a straight line to what Scripture predicts. But we'll see, sometimes the straight line doesn't stay straight for very long, but eventually we know what will happen. So if you haven't looked at that before, please, it's a free download from our website, Educating Our World. And again, under the heading of Bible Prophecy, the book's called 25 Signs. We're near the end. All right, headline number 2 is rather scathing. Israel KATZ, he is the defense minister. Iran will pay for shattering ceasefire. This is a story from their website, Virtual Jerusalem. Devastating attack on Beersheba high-rise murders 5, including a mother and son. Finance Minister Smotrich said Tehran will tremble as Israel vows swift and devastating payback for gross truce violations. Trump's premature triumph is in tatters as poor coordination and unfamiliarity with Islamic deceptions take their toll on diplomacy and ruin his victory lap. This is their comments on all this. Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, delivered a forceful condemnation on Tuesday morning, declaring that the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a heavy price for violating the Trump-brokered ceasefire agreed to just hours before. Tehran launched a coordinated missile attack and drone attack against Israel. Speaking outside of the Knesset in Jerusalem, Katz said Iran has crossed every red line, not just ours, but the world's. This was not just a violation of trust, it was a deliberate act of terror dressed in diplomatic clothing, and for this they will pay. The strong statement came in the wake of a night of high drama and shifting tides. U.S. President Donald Trump, acting as an informal envoy, had announced late June 23rd that both Israel and Iran had agreed to an immediate ceasefire, but about 3:24 a.m. on June 24th, air raid sirens sounded across southern and central Israel as Iranian ballistic missiles and explosive drones struck military infrastructure and civilian targets. At least 19 Israelis were injured and significant damage was inflicted on fuel depots and logistic facilities. Katz emphasized that Iran's breach was premeditated. They agreed to a ceasefire while preparing their launchers. They lied with one hand extended and the other hand holding a detonator. This is the regime's nature, and the world must now treat it accordingly. The foreign minister also appealed to the international community not to fall for what they described as Tehran's cycle of deceit and aggression. Iran used diplomacy as a delay tactic, as a cover for terror, but Israel is not deceived, as we expect our allies not to be either. Katz's message was clear. Iran's betrayal would not go unanswered, and the cost would be exacted not only on the regime's military infrastructure, but also on its strategic deterrence. As the Israeli Air Force launched retaliatory strikes on Iranian targets in Kermanshah, Esfahan, and eastern Syria, Katz reiterated that Israel's goal remained firm. We are not interested in war for war's sake, but we will no longer play by their rules. If Iran seeks to destabilize the region and harm our citizens, then it must suffer the consequences. And he concluded with a message to the Iranian people: we have no quarrel with you. Our war is against the tyrants who rule you, who send their sons to die abroad, who poison your future. Your regime has started a fire that it cannot control. We will extinguish it. We will build it from ashes. Now, here is the problem. What happened was right before the ceasefire was to take effect at 7 a.m. Israeli time this morning, there was an attack launched by Iran at Beersheba, and it hit a large apartment building, a 7-story building. The pictures of it just basically gutted it. 4 people were killed at least, a lot were injured, and it was terrible because it happened right before the ceasefire was supposed to take effect. Now, to be completely forthcoming, Israel did the same thing hours before. Like Trump said, they were sending loads of bombs on Tehran. They weren't stopped bombing, even though the ceasefire would soon take effect. Anyways, the article continues in Virtual Jerusalem. Katz's words echo a growing consensus within the Israeli war cabinet. The era of restraint is over. Iran's betrayal has confirmed what Israel has long warned the world. Diplomacy with a terror regime must be backed by the willingness to strike decisively when that regime reveals its true face. Now, it's these words that got Donald Trump very upset. He called Netanyahu, said, you can't continue on. You can't strike Iran back. Let's just call it a day. So we're going to see what happens as this day goes on. We're about a little after 6 in the morning here as we're doing this in Southern California. So it's 10 hours ahead, 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Israel. And we'll see what happens as the day goes by. All right, headline number three. Now, here's the real worry for Israel. Tehran will restore its nuclear program. Iranian atomic chief vows. This is from the Times of Israel. Mohammad Eslami said Iran prepped in advance for damage to nuclear sites. The IAE chief, that's Rafael Grossi, welcomes an uncertain truce, urges Tehran to pursue diplomatic solution. The IAEA, of course, is the International Atomic Energy Association. Iran is assessing the damage to its nuclear industry following Israel's intensive 12-day campaign against it, and arrangements have been made for its restoration, Iran's nuclear chief Mohammad Eslami said on Tuesday. The plan is to prevent interruptions in the process of production and services, Eslami said, according to Iran's state-owned Mer News, claiming that Tehran had been prepared for damage to its nuclear sites. Iran's nuclear program took serious blows in Israeli bombings since June 13th, and particularly early on Sunday when the U.S. dropped these massive bunker buster bombs with the B-2s, of course, we've seen that, and fired missiles at 3 of the nuclear facilities as they joined the Israeli campaign. The Israeli and American strikes targeted uranium enrichment sites and various research and development facilities tied to the program. Washington and Jerusalem have asserted that the bombings caused significant damage to Iran's nuclear ambitions and set the country back considerably. Okay, that's the article, but here's the key: set back, but not halted. There's the bottom line this morning. So no regime change, no halt to Iran's nuclear program. All in all, nothing has really been accomplished. So we're going to see how this goes forward from here. People in Israel are not happy, and we will see how long this ceasefire lasts. The Russian ambassador Lavrov said he agrees that the ceasefire is necessary, but doesn't know how long it's going to last, and there's kind of consensus out there. So we will see how the day goes and what will take place. And as always, we'll give you the latest. Again, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, as always, may our Lord richly, richly bless.